I'm Alex Bell, host of To The Point on ABC 10, and over the next 30 minutes, we're looking at the latest major changes in the Trump transition and also addressing what it could all mean for California in the weeks and months ahead. And we're looking at tariffs, immigration, the environment, and will Vice President Kamala Harris run for governor in 2026? But first, I want to talk about tariffs. Headlines about new tariffs just before Thanksgiving have the world leaders fighting back. President-elect Donald Trump is threatening to impose tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China as soon as he takes office. It could dramatically raise prices for Americans on goods imported into the country. The president-elect says he would impose a 25% tax on all products entering the country from Canada and Mexico, and an additional 10% tariff on goods from China as one of his first executive orders. Trump had this to say about tariffs back in October.
To me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff.
Mexico's president says she sent a letter to Trump warning she'll hit back with tariffs of her own. Mexico is America's largest trading partner, with the U.S. buying near $500 billion of Mexican goods like computers, cars, and electrical equipment. As for Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says that he called Trump directly and had this to say to Canadian lawmakers.
I don't think the idea of going to war with the United States is what anyone wants. What we will do is stand up for Canadian jobs.
Why is the president-elect threatening tariffs? Well, he says it's part of his efforts to crack down on illegal immigrants and drugs, saying, quote, his tariffs will remain in effect until such time as drugs, in particular fentanyl and all illegal aliens, stop this invasion of our country. Meanwhile, Mexico's president called the fentanyl epidemic a consumption problem inside the U.S. President-elect Trump is still promising mass deportations once he takes office. He says he wants to use the military to help deport millions of people. This could have seismic economic effects in California. More than 10 million, or 27% of California's population, is foreign-born, according to the most recent U.S. Census data. Roughly a fifth of that is thought to be undocumented. Now, experts suggest deportations could potentially inflict billions of dollars in direct damages to a wide range of industries, including small businesses, agriculture, and construction. But can Trump legally use the military for deportations? Here's Verify's Brandon Lewis.
After he won the election, Donald Trump reaffirmed his pledge to declare a national emergency and use the military to deport the estimated 11 million undocumented people in the U.S.
It's going to be the largest deportation of criminals. We're going to get them out of here fast.
Multiple viewers emailed us asking if he can legally do that. So let's verify using these sources. All of our sources say yes, it is legal for the president to use the military to help assist in a mass deportation. But it's unprecedented, so the plan will likely be challenged in court. Active duty, full-time service members like soldiers or Marines can't arrest people within the U.S. under federal law. However, they can build infrastructure, such as temporary detention facilities, transport detainees, and provide armed backup for domestic law enforcement. Trump could also ask governors to send their National Guards to help. Unlike active duty service members, guardsmen are allowed to arrest people domestically if their governor allows it.
The National Guard is a state militia, can be called out by the president with the cooperation of the state governors. And so you could have the National Guard from, let's say, Texas, be used for apprehension.
Our legal experts say Trump's declaration of a national emergency would help speed up the process, bypass some legal arguments, and free up funding, similar to how he diverted funding from the military during his first term in office to build parts of the border wall. The Brennan Center says only Congress can vote to end an emergency, but it effectively needs a veto-proof majority to do so. With your Verify, I'm Brandon Lewis.
Over the past several days, Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, says the administration is already getting to work to carry out the president-elect's plan. He has joined the governor of Texas at the southern border and warned Democrat officials not to get in the way.
Let me be clear. There is going to be a mass deportation because we just finished a mass illegal immigration crisis on the border.
Homan even threatened the mayor of Denver with jail after the mayor said he was willing to risk incarceration to stop possible mass deportations. On the environment, California may be spending more on electric vehicles next year, depending on if the incoming Trump administration gets rid of federal rebates for EVs. Now, President-elect Trump has said that once he's in office, the federal $7,500 tax credit for electric vehicle purchases will be eliminated. If that happens, Newsom says that he would revive California's rebates that were supported by the state's cap and trade program. Those tax credits would provide a $7,500 credit for those buying a new EV and $4,000 for a used one.
California wants to dominate in this next big global shift. You already saw last quarter we were over, I think it was 25% of all new car purchases. That wasn't a mandate. That was just consumer choice.
And this announcement is causing backlash from Elon Musk, who shared a Bloomberg article on X saying Tesla could be excluded from these EV buyer credits because of market limitations. Elon wrote, quote, "Even though Tesla is the only company who manufactures their EVs in California, this is insane." Now, the governor's office tells ABC 10 that they are not targeting any company. They say that the proposal for electric vehicle rebates and any potential market cap is subject to negotiation with the state legislature and would be implemented by the California Air Resources Board. Now, I want to go ahead and bring in our political strategist here. Joining us once again, we have Craig DeLuz, our Republican strategist, and we have Roger Salazar, our Democrat strategist, joining us once again tonight. Thank you both so much for being here. A lot to talk about once again.
Oh, yeah.
So, of course, I want to start with EVs, what we were just talking about. You know, Trump saying that he's going to remove this tax credit. Newsom saying, wait, if this happens, we're going to put some state rebates back in. My first question, I'm going to start with you, Craig, first. Do you think Newsom's move will face political or economic challenges at the state level if he does this?
Well, keep in mind, Californians buy more EVs than anybody else in the country. So I do believe that there will be support amongst the car buying community for this. The challenge is going to be when it comes to the budget, because in the end, we're talking about fairly high priced items that the average person is very, very difficult for them to afford anyway. The people who are going to benefit are largely going to be people who are going to be higher income earners. So some voters are going to have an issue with that.
Yeah. And Roger, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, but again, I also think that it's important if California wants to continue to encourage electric vehicle consumption and purchase. This is probably a good thing. And again, what better way to make it more affordable than to provide some of these rebates for folks who want to? And again, it's not just the Teslas that are being purchased out there. There are Fords, there are Chevys, there are GMCs that are electric that folks are interested in. I just had somebody talking to me about the Ford F-150 Lightning and whether that would work for them in the workplace. Again, I think as long as they sort of keep this expansive and inclusive of a wide variety of vehicles that consumers can choose from, I think it's a good thing.
Well, and the challenge, though, is going to be is that excluded will be the one company that's actually successfully selling electric vehicles. Ford, for example, is losing about $1.5 billion a quarter on their electric truck. The fact is that most of the legacy car companies just have not found a way in which to turn a profit being able to sell electric vehicles.
And I do want to ask you, and Roger, I'm going to start with you first. Sure. Do you think Californians will change their mind about owning an EV depending on if Trump does, change these tax credits? I mean, what potential impacts do you see coming to the EV market if this does happen?
Well, I think that's one of the things that worries the California state officials is that again, they've already seen a drop in EV consumption. It spikes and it drops, and it's had a little bit of a drop here, and they don't want a further drop especially with the goals that they have so ambitiously set in place, for electric vehicles by certain date points. But again, I also think that there has to be some options for consumers, and they need to not just encourage hybrid EVs, but also hybrids and other vehicles that provide consumers with a choice of the different types of vehicles they're able to choose from. So I know that a lot of this is still subject to negotiation with the legislature.
Yeah.
They've got to think through it a little bit more carefully, and I know some of these political sort of one-off press conferences are cool and popular these days, but let's think about it a little bit harder.
Still a lot of details to
iron
out.
A lot of details.
Yeah. Do you think people are going to change their minds?
Well, I think that the market will determine if they produce a product that is cost-effective, that provides the benefits that consumers need, and also in particular, specifically with the all-electric vehicles, that the infrastructure is in place. I think you'll start to see people start to gravitate that direction. I own a plug-in hybrid. But I did so because it met the needs of what it was that I was looking for. I think if we focus on where the market is, rather than trying to force a market through government manipulation, I think we'll have much more success in being able to market these alternative fuel vehicles.
And I want to go to something that you brought up earlier. How do you think the state will reach people who are middle or lower income? I mean, affording an EV vehicle when they're struggling to buy groceries, find affordable housing. How do you think the state will reach people that are already struggling?
Well,
especially because the state, we know they have established this initiative to have 100% new cars and light trucks sold in California be zero emissions by 2035. How are they going to do that when people are struggling?
Well, they believe that by providing these tax credits, they're going to be able to do that. The problem is that all it's going to do is drive up the cost of the vehicles. Once again, until they find a way to make it so that the manufacturers can produce them and market them cheaper, that's the thing that they need to be looking for. How do we remove regulation? How do we make it more cost effective for them to be able to produce these vehicles so that they can sell them at a lower price?
People can actually afford them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Roger, what are your thoughts?
Well, the interesting thing is, Craig and I were talking about this earlier. So some of the difficulties these companies are having with selling their vehicles are forcing them to drop the prices down even further. And again, you can almost get some of these things for a steal right now. But again, that's market forces in play, as you discussed. I still think the state ought to do everything they can to encourage greener transportation, including EV vehicles. I agree that they must be affordable. I think until you're able to sort of buy your equivalent of an entry-level vehicle, that fits the needs of a daily commuter, that you're still going to have a problem. But you got to keep working on it.
Do you think we're going to see any other environmental rollbacks under a second administration, Roger?
Oh, absolutely. Under the Trump administration, they've already discussed massive rollbacks, on clean air policies, on all sorts of policies, especially ones, and that's one of the reasons that you saw Newsom try to put together a special session on it. But I listened to Craig a little bit, some of these issues and.
We love when you guys talk together.
It's kind of fun because it's interesting to me because a lot of it is, all right, what is real and what's a negotiating point? What is that? So I do expect that they're going to be pushed back. I know the state of California is ready for it. They have their own plans on what they want to implement, and of course, we're all about states' rights, right? So let's keep going.
Right. Well, I think some of the things you're going to see, in particular at the federal level, with the overturning of the Chevron decision, I think you're going to see that a number of these regulations that have been put in place by regulatory agencies, not by Congress, in other words, no law's been passed, nothing's been signed into law, just literally regulatory agencies deciding that they're going to make law from the executive. I think you're going to see a number of those things be rolled back. And a lot of them in particular are going to be some of the common sense ones, like, I don't know, being able to use your pellet stove or being able to utilize your lawnmower or your leaf blower. Those are all things that at the federal level and honestly here at the state level that organizations like the California Air Resources Board have worked to try and remove from our ability to be able to do those very simple things or utilize those everyday household items.
And I do want to switch topics for a second.
Sure.
We know that tariffs are a big part of the conversation that's happening this week. President-elect Trump says that he plans to impose 25% across-the-board tariffs on Mexico and Canada if countries, he says, don't crack down on their borders with the U.S. First question right off the top, what are the pros and the cons of these proposed tariffs? Craig, I'm going to start with you.
Well, first of all, you have to start with my number one philosophy when it comes to Donald Trump. Don't listen to what he says, look at what he does. And if you look at what he did in 2016, he came in with the same attitude regarding tariffs and Mexico and Canada. And as a result, he was able to renegotiate NAFTA and actually improve our position, our trade position with both countries. So I think, number one, it's a bargaining ploy. I think even he recognizes that he doesn't want to be responsible for implementing tariffs that are going to push down the economy and push up inflation. So I think that's the first thing that we have to realize.
Okay.
I think that he's doing it for a very, very important thing, because to be quite honest, in particular when it comes to Mexico and our southern border, they need to do more and step up more when it comes to enforcing their side of the southern border. And then when it comes to fentanyl and fentanyl production, I think both Mexico and Canada can be doing more, and I think he's going to be leaning on them to do more.
So you're saying it's less about the tariffs, more about securing the borders and what's happening at the borders?
The borders as well as the issue of fentanyl.
Okay. Craig, what are your thoughts? I'm sorry, Roger, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I just think it's important for people to understand, because I don't think people quite get sort of what tariffs are. And again, if a tariff, and the way sort of Trump describes it is like he's going to charge China more, charge Canada or Mexico more. They aren't the ones that are actually paying these things. It's the consumer that's paying it. The importer pays that tariff, not the country of origin. The importer then has to make a decision. Walmart or anybody, or anybody else has to decide whether or not they're going to pass that cost on to the consumer or eat it themselves. Most of them most likely are going to pass that cost on to the consumer, so it's going to end up costing you more. So again, there was a study done, by an economic institute, an independent one that showed that these tariffs, the way Trump has described them, would end up costing the average family $2,600 a year in additional costs. So we just have to be very, very careful about, whether this is Trump's bluster but if he follows through with what he actually said he was going to do on the campaign trail, it's going to end up costing people more money.
I saw you shaking your head about the cost more.
Well, if you listen to most traditional fiscal conservatives, they'll tell you tariffs are a tax. They add to the cost of goods sold, which means the cost of goods sold is basically something that's added to the price that the consumer winds up paying.
Yeah.
It's not so much the tariffs that are effective, it's the threat of tariffs that are effective. And to be quite frank, the tariffs that Trump that he actually did implement in the first administration, the interesting thing is Biden didn't remove those tariffs. He didn't remove those tariffs once he became president, which shows that there is some point to actually doing the ones that they actually wound up implementing.
And I also think we have to be very careful about sort of what the response from other countries. And we've already seen very aggressively with the president of Mexico, Sheinbaum, that she's like, I'm ready. If you want to do it, I'll start too. And again, that's how trade wars begin. And again, ultimately, that just ends up costing us all.
How do you think this is going to impact everyday Americans on just everyday goods?
Well, I think it's gonna raise the if he follows through with it, that it absolutely is going to raise the prices on products for everyday Americans. But as Craig says, maybe it's a posturing ploy for him, and they don't end up happening. But if they do, they will end up costing him.
It'll wind up increasing the cost of goods purchased that are manufactured in other countries, for example, Mexico as well as China. It will not increase the cost of goods sold on products that are manufactured here in the United States.
I will say one other thing too. Yeah. There's for example, the shoemaker Steve Madden has said, that if the Trump goes ahead and implements his tariff on China, he's just going to move his manufacturing to Vietnam and Cambodia. So some of this stuff doesn't necessarily come back to us as we'd like it to.
And I want to ask you, if this does happen hypothetically, how soon do you think people would start to feel these impacts?
Well, again, as soon as that tariff goes into place, the importer is going to have to decide whether they're going to have to raise the prices on you. So basically, as soon as they get that tariff tax, whatever you want to call it, they're going to pass that on to you. So it's going to be pretty quick.
Well, I agree that if it happens,
wait, you agree?
I agree.
I love when you guys agree.
I agree
This is
that
great.
it will be pretty quick, but I believe that because just like with the increase in the minimum wage, you're going to see a lot of these companies. They're going to start to test those price increases early. So in other words, they're not going to wait for it. If they believe it's going to pass, you'll start to see the prices gradually go up before it even becomes law.
Now, with the tariffs, do you think we're going to see job losses, job gains?
Yeah, there's already
what does
estimates.
job security look like?
Yeah, there's already estimates out there that that I guess Walmart was talking about. That when they were that this could end up costing over 400,000 jobs in the U.S. If Trump were to implement it the way he wants to implement it. So yeah, you're going to you might see some job losses as well as increased costs. So again, you have to be very, very careful when playing with these kinds of games.
You also could see job increases for companies that actually produce and manufacture here in the United States, as the cost of those products are not going to go up. There may be a greater parity and a greater demand for American-made products.
Are there any specific industries that you think are more likely to pass on these possible increases? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, and I think it's the ones we're all going to be talking about on Friday. These big box stores, whether it's Walmart, Best Buy, these folks who import a lot of these products from China. I think that's probably where you're going to see the biggest hit.
Well, most definitely, it's going to be those that are not very cost elastic, meaning there's not a lot of movement in price. It's going to be things that have a very, very low profit margin. And when you start looking in particular at groceries, that's where I think you'll start to see some of that.
Will there be any benefits for American consumers? I know you were talking about possible increase in jobs and products that are made in America. What other benefits do you think there could be?
Well, I think in particular there'll be an improvement for workers, the people who are manufacturing these. One of the advantages that Mexico has is they're not limited by either the environmental standards that we have here in the United States or the labor law standards that we have here in the United States. And that's a big part of what he's working to try and negotiate, is to remove that unfair advantage by improving the quality of workers, or the environment that workers are working in, their conditions, their pay, as well as Mexico's environmental impact, in order to help by removing that competitive advantage that they have. It'll help American workers as well, but it also will help those in Mexico.
It's a big
You see any benefits?
No, it's a big if. From my perspective, again, if he does what he said he wanted to do on the campaign trail, I just think it ends up hurting more than it helps.
All right, I want to switch topics once again. Harris possibly putting her hat in the ring. This has been a big topic of conversation, a big what if up in the air again, just like the tariffs. I do want to go to a poll, though. The Berkeley Institute of Governmental Studies, this was taken right before the election in October. The poll showed that many would consider supporting Vice President Harris if she ran for governor of California. Now, 33% of people who were polled said that they would be very likely to support her, and then 36% said they're not at all likely to support her. So my question, and Roger, I'm going to start with you first. If Vice President Harris did throw her hat in the ring to run for governor of California, what challenges do you think that she's going to face in transitioning from the vice president to the governor? And also with her national profile, what do you think is going to help or hinder her?
Well, look, I think that Kamala Harris can basically do what she wants to do in this situation. If she wants to run for governor, she's going to be the front runner, at least one of the top front runners here. She has an ability. She's already shown an ability to raise money. She was able to raise money, on the campaign trail. She's already proven she can win elections in California. She won U.S. Senate. She, when you look at the race for president, she got more votes than Trump did in California. So people obviously know who she is, know what she's all about.
She's established here.
She's established. For me, the question would be, do I want to do this? Do I run one for governor, or do I want to do something else, or do I want to, hold on and run for president again in 2028? Because that's still an option for her as well. So I don't know what she's going to do. I don't know if she'd do it. This is a very deep bench of Democratic candidates that we have here in California. I know you might disagree with me on that one, but I think it's a very deep bench of candidates that we have. And but if she decided she wanted to put her hat in the ring, she'd be right up there at the top.
Craig?
I'll just put it this way. Number one, she has name ID far beyond any of the people who've currently announced. I mean,
on the short list,
most people could not even tell you who most of the people who are currently running for governor actually are. So she would definitely become a front runner. She's already been elected statewide as the U.S. Senator as well as Attorney General. She obviously would be a clear front runner. I think she'd have some serious questions to answer, and I think the interesting thing is people from her own party are going to ask that question. You raised and spent over $1 billion, and you have nothing to show for it except campaign debt. Is that how you're going to run the state of California? Those are the sorts of things that she's going to have to overcome. And it's not going to be coming from the right who's going to be asking her those questions. It's going to be folks from the left who are going to be asking her those questions.
I do want to dig a little bit deeper here, because do you think that she would have a different approach to economic challenges here in California when we're looking at the cost of living and affordable housing?
Well, just have to keep in mind, again, when you're a U.S. Senator, even when you're Attorney General, obviously your responsibilities are much different than you would be when you're governor of the state of California. But I think she understands the state very well. I think she understands, the dynamics of the people in California. So I think she would be able to pivot. But again, it's the CEO of California. Not just one of 50 as a U.S. Senator. So she's going to have to make that transition. But I think she's capable of doing it.
The reality is she's never been a CEO. She's always signed the front of a check, never signed, or signed the back of a check, never signed the front of a check. The reality is she has no real experience building economies. She doesn't know what it takes to be able to run a business and to make executive decisions. With the exception of what she did as Attorney General, she has no real experience in that either. I think it would be a challenge for her running the state of California. I think the fact that we are a one-party state, a super majority of Democrats, I think that's more of a hindrance to her than it is a help to her. I think that Jerry Brown was a great example of an individual who understood that being the head of a one-party state meant sometimes you have to be the grown-up in the room and tell your own people no. Gavin Newsom doesn't get that, never got that, and that's how California went from having a $100 billion surplus to a $78 billion deficit and continuing to go into debt.
I see you laughing over there.
No, I just again, but who
What are
had
your
more
thoughts?
experience? You got, the Republican Party has put up guys like Steve Poizner and others in the past that just can, they all love those folks, and they had less experience than what Kamala Harris did. So it just cracks me up. The standard there.
Well, she was a former prosecutor. What do you think her role will be as governor? Being a former prosecutor, what role do you think she would play in, addressing things like criminal justice reform here in the state of California, especially when we see how voters turned out for Proposition 36?
And you remember, again, a lot of the attacks that she got, and this is, again, another one where Craig and I agree on this, the attacks that she got when she was running for president were from the left because she was too tough on crime when she was attorney general. At least that's the way they felt about it. So, again, there is, especially when you're an executive in California, Gray Davis used to call it paddle to the left, paddle to the right a little bit to sort of to chart that course. And that's something that that you have to do when you sort of get into that top job. But again, I just look, if she was interested in doing it, again, I don't know what her approach would be, and the dynamics that she would have, again, whether she even wants to do it. But I think she can. She'd be a formidable candidate. And I think she'd make an excellent governor if she decided she wanted to do it.
All right, before we wrap up here, I got about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So there's an app called Cameo. If you don't know what it is at home, Cameo is just an app, and it lets you request videos from people if you want a pep talk, a happy birthday, a watch to the point on ABC 10, whatever message you want. But we're seeing a lot of people get on Cameo. One person in particular. Can we roll the clip of Matt Gaetz on Cameo?
What's up, Chris? This is Matt Gaetz. I know you're bummed out. I'm not going to be taking out the garbage at the Department of Justice, but don't despair. We've got an awesome Attorney General coming in, Pam Bondi. And you know what? They can stop one of us, but they can't stop all of us.
So that was former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, who recently withdrew his name from consideration as President-elect Trump's Attorney General. He's now on Cameo. The only question I have is why? We're seeing Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert. We're seeing, quite a few people. Why do you think they're doing this?
Grifter's going to grift. Look, I think
it's called the entrepreneurial spirit.
I guess
the
so.
brother's unemployed.
I mean, you got to make a buck somehow, I guess.
I just have to address it because people are talking about this.
Again, I'm just surprised Lauren Boebert isn't on other sites. But hey, that's beyond me. Look, sticking to the Cameo thing. Again, look, this shows me, that especially a guy like Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz has always been all about himself, and if he can make a buck selling himself to people. Well, it's.
I saw reports that videos are starting at like $500. I was like, wow.
And again, people love to give away their money, to guys like that. I don't understand it. Craig, you get it?
Craig, I got to hear your thoughts on this. Yeah.
All I will say is that there are a lot of people right now in government, and they're in elective office, and they're on the right and they're on the left, who are more interested in their Twitter feed than they are in their legislative package or their legislative portfolio. I'm not saying that you shouldn't utilize or leverage social media or opportunities to be able to get your voice directly out to the people in order to help improve the opportunity for you to be able to govern. But I think that in many cases, many people are more focused on that profile than they are on actually governing. Yeah, and I'll just leave it at that.
I cannot agree more.
And you guys agree on something yet again. What a perfect way to end the show. I appreciate it, guys. No problem. As always, thank you so much for being here. We deeply appreciate it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you having us.
Of course, our conversation does not end here. You're going to be seeing a lot more of these guys. We know that we have a lot of topics to break down. We know you at home have a lot of questions. So if you do have something that you want to reach out, you have a question, you want us to look into something, or you even have a question for them, reach out to us at any time. You can always find us on ABC 10. And don't forget to download the ABC 10 Plus streaming app wherever you stream. Have a great night. We'll see you